My father forced me to marry a disabled billionaire, just to free his little princess from an unwanted marriage. My name is Valeria Ariza, daughter of Humberto Ariza, a business tycoon with more power than any man needs, and less heart than any daughter deserves. My mother, Lucia, was my safe place. She had a way of hugging me that made the whole world disappear. But one day, she was gone. A car accident. They told me she died instantly. I was 9 years old. I remember I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because I didn't understand. I just sat at the edge of my bed in the black dress they forced me to wear, staring out the window, waiting for her to come back. But she never did. And neither did my father. At least not the version of him I barely knew. A few months later, there was a new woman in the house, Sandra, my stepmother. Tall, elegant, with a calculating gaze. She never yelled, never acted overtly cruel, but her indifference made it clear. I was an inherited problem, a piece that didn't fit into her new game board. And with her came Natalia. Natalia was everything I wasn't. From day one, she walked through the house as if she owned every corner. She had that kind of smile that made adults adore her. She learned fast, how to tilt her head when she cried, how to look at my father so he'd do anything for her, and it worked. My father, Humberto, started looking at her like she was a priceless gem. He bought her dresses, took her to dinners, introduced her to society. He said, my daughter Natalia with so much pride, it froze my chest. I was just Valeria, the other one, the daughter who reminded him of the woman he lost, who he probably never loved as much as he pretended. Don't get me wrong. I never lacked food, clothes, or education. I had everything, except love. I learned to stay quiet, to study in silence, to eat fast and leave the table before anyone noticed me. I learned how to disappear without moving. I became an expert at pretending it didn't hurt. But it did hurt. Every time Natalia got an "I'm proud of you," every time my father referred to me as she instead of saying my name, it hurt. There's something more painful than rejection, indifference. And my house was filled with it. Sometimes I wondered why I didn't just leave, why I didn't pack my things and disappear forever. But the truth is, a part of me still had hope. A childish, almost silly wish that someone would look at me one day and say, I see you, Valeria. That never happened. So when, years later, my father called me into his office to talk about something important, I thought maybe, just maybe, he wanted to know me, ask how I was doing, about my life, my dreams. But no. What he offered, no, imposed, was a marriage to a complete stranger. He said I had to marry a billionaire because Natalia didn't want to, as if my life were just another pawn in his chess game, as if I wasn't worth enough to have a choice. And the most ironic part is, I said yes. I accepted without questions, without protest, without tears. Because after a lifetime of feeling invisible, I guess I just got used to obeying, to accepting whatever others decided for me, as if I had no voice. But that was about to change, because what none of them, Humberto, Sandra, Natalia, knew was that by discarding me, they were setting me free. And what no one expected was that this forced decision would be the very thing that finally made me visible. Since I was a child, I knew what it felt like to be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. My name is Valeria, and this is the story of how I went from being a shadow in my own family to reclaiming my voice. When I was 9 years old, I lost my mother. She was everything I had, her hug, her laughter, her way of making me feel like I mattered. Everything vanished overnight, and with her death, I lost my father too, Humberto Ariza, a powerful man, respected, feared, but to me, simply a stranger, a man who stopped seeing me the day my mum died. A few months later, there was a new woman in the house, Sandra, his new wife, and with her came her daughter, Natalia. Natalia, the favorite, the adored one, the perfect daughter. From then on, I became invisible. I turned into that presence that didn't bother, didn't speak, didn't disrupt. I was polite, quiet, and obedient. I lived in a huge house full of luxury, but I felt lonelier than ever. They had their world, and I had mine, a hollow world. Years later, unexpectedly, my father called me into his office. For a moment, I believed he wanted to get to know me, ask me if I was happy, if I had dreams, if I needed anything, but no. He just looked at me and said, I had to marry a man named Gabriel Alvarez, a billionaire in a wheelchair. Why? Because Natalia didn't want to, and someone had to fulfill that commitment, as if I were a replacement, a bargaining chip. And the saddest part? I accepted. I accepted because I was already used to not having a voice, to my life not belonging to me. But that moment, that gesture of resignation, marked a before and after. Because without knowing it, that was the start of something bigger. That was the first time I felt like I was about to live my own story. It was an ordinary day. Or so I thought. I got a call from my father. Brief, cold, no affection, no pleasantries. Valeria, come to my office. It's important. It wasn't unusual. He often spoke to me as if I were just another employee in his empire. That's how I'd felt for years, an unpaid worker. No emotional salary, no daughter's rights. I walked into his office. He greeted me with that stern look, brow furrowed, as if I'd already done something wrong just by existing. In front of him sat 2 lawyers, some documents, and a sealed envelope. No greetings, no questions about how I was. "You're marrying Gabriel Alvarez." "Excuse me?" I asked, confused. "It's not a request. It's an arrangement. He's the heir of a powerful family, but his health has made him undesirable to many. The deal was with Natalia, but she doesn't want it, so you'll do it. Just like that. Cold. Simple. As if he were asking me to sign for a package. As if I wasn't a person. And what if I say no?" I dared to ask. He looked at me and smiled. That kind of smile from someone who thinks they control everything. "You don't have a choice." I had a moment. Just one. Where I considered screaming, running, crying, but I didn't. I just looked at him and nodded. I didn't even understand why I agreed. Maybe because I was tired of fighting for a place I was never given, tired of trying to earn his affection. Maybe also because, for the first time, I felt that by accepting, I was finally pulling myself out of that world that had been suffocating me since I was a child. They gave me the documents. The prenup was ready. I'd meet Gabriel in 2 days, a formal lunch, with witnesses, like a deal, like the signing of a company merger. I walked out of the office, trembling, not because I feared him, but because I feared myself. What kind of woman lets herself be sold without a fight? But what no one knew was that inside that apparent submission, I was making the first real decision of my life. Maybe just beyond that door, a different story was about to begin. One where, for the first time, I was the protagonist. 2 days after my father decided my fate as if it were just another transaction in his empire, the moment arrived. The meeting was set in a luxurious mansion on the outskirts of the city. It looked like something out of a Hollywood movie. Perfectly trimmed gardens, marble fountains, a grand entrance with white columns that demanded respect. I felt like I was stepping into a whole new life, though I wasn't sure if it was for better or worse. Sandra and Natalia didn't come. "There's no need for us to witness that little show," my stepmother said, wearing her eternal expression of disdain. Only my father accompanied me, as if he were delivering a signed folder. Not a single word during the ride. No advice. Not even a, "Are you okay, daughter?" And there he was, Gabriel Alvarez. The first thing I noticed was that his wheelchair didn't make him any less imposing. He wasn't what I had imagined. Not weak, not dull, just different. He had intense, intelligent eyes that looked at you like they could see more than what you said. The kind of gaze built not from power, but from pain. He was probably around 32, maybe a bit older. But he didn't look tired of life. He looked like someone who had simply grown used to fighting it. The introduction was brief. Gabriel greeted me politely. No forced smile, no fake warmth. And he didn't look at me with pity like others did. He was straightforward, real. "I imagine this wasn't your choice. It wasn't mine either. That's why I think we might get along." I didn't know what to say. His honesty threw me off. He wasn't trying to charm me, he was just being himself. And somehow, that calmed me more than any kind gesture could have. The lunch was awkward. Not because of Gabriel, but because of the tension floating in the air. My father talked about business, contracts, deadlines. Gabriel barely responded, and I just listened. It felt like sitting at a table with sharks negotiating which part of the body to bite first. But near the end of the meeting, when my father stepped out to take a phone call, Gabriel said something I'll never forget. "I don't want a decorative wife, or an object. If we're going to do this, it'll be on our terms. You decide if you stay, or if you run now." I wasn't sure if he meant it as a warning or as a way to set me free, but I answered without hesitation. "I've been trapped my whole life. As strange as it sounds, this feels freer than what I'm leaving behind." He nodded. He didn't smile, just looked at me, like he understood. That day, there were no romantic promises, no love at first sight. Just 2 broken people forced into something they didn't ask for, discovering that maybe, in the middle of chaos, they weren't as alone as they thought. The days that followed were strangely peaceful. There was no talk of love, no dreams spun out of nothing, but something had changed in me. For the first time in years, I could sleep without that tight knot in my chest. Gabriel sent me short, polite messages, asked how I was, shared books, songs. He didn't try to impress me. He just talked to me like I mattered. It wasn't much, but to me, it meant everything. Until she reappeared. Natalia. A week before the wedding, I found her sitting in the mansion's living room waiting for me. She wore an elegant dress, expensive perfume, and that smile that always hid venom behind it. "You look different. More alive. Did you fall for the cripple?" "That's none of your business, Natalia." "Oh, but it is. You see, I've changed my mind." Her words took the air from my lungs. "What are you talking about? Gabriel? I want him back. I didn't realize he'd completely cut me off when I refused to marry him. He won't answer me, won't come looking for me. He's ignoring me. And that, dear little sister, I won't tolerate." That's when I understood everything. It wasn't love. It was pride. Ego. Gabriel had taken away the attention she thought she was entitled to forever. And now, seeing me close to something she believed was hers by right, she was burning with rage. That same afternoon, I heard the worst sentence that could have ever come out of her mouth. In front of my father, with fake tears running down her cheeks, she shouted, "Daddy, I love my brother-in-law. I want him gone." And once again, my world began to crumble. Humberto said nothing, he just looked at her. Then he looked at me, and I felt that old childhood chill run through me. I knew what was coming. The next day, Gabriel called me. His tone had changed. "Are you okay? Why are you asking like that?" "Because something's going on. They're snooping into my accounts, trying to renegotiate the agreements, and your father isn't the same in our calls." Natalia had made her move, and in that moment I knew. She didn't just want me away from Gabrielle. She wanted to erase me from the equation, as if I had never existed, as if my life was merely an obstacle in her path. For the first time since all this began, I felt real fear. But I also felt something else. Rage. I wasn't going to disappear. Not again. When you realize that no one is going to save you, you realize you have to save yourself. That phrase echoed in my head for days. After Natalia's little performance, her tantrum disguised as longing, things started to change, subtly but brutally. The war didn't come with screams or fists. It was silent, elegant, and meticulously planned. It started with my father's calls. Brief, curt. "Valeria, sign this addendum. It's just an update to the agreement." When I read the papers, I knew something was wrong. The document reduced my legal involvement in Gabriel's company, even if we legally married. They were stripping away my protection, gently, as if I wouldn't notice. But this time, I did notice. I called Gabrielle. "Don't sign anything unless it goes through my lawyer first," he said firmly. "I know they're planning something. I just don't know what yet." It was the first time I truly felt him close. He wasn't the billionaire with a perfect, closed-off world anymore. He was a worried man, attentive, protective. And I was no longer the submissive girl who let everyone else decide for her. Natalia didn't stop. She started defaming me. Rumours on social media, hints in high society circles. She called me the opportunist, the stray sister, the poor one who took what wasn't hers. She even showed up at Gabriel's house unannounced. "I just came to see him. He met me first. Why can't I visit him?" she said to his butler. Gabriel rejected her. He shut the door, literally, but that only fueled her hatred even more. And then, Sandra entered the scene. My stepmother had always lingered in the background like a poisonous shadow, but now she spoke to my father every night. Family gatherings turned into constant traps, suspicious glances, questions disguised as concern, and above all, growing pressure for me to fail. They wanted me to break, to feel guilty, to leave voluntarily, so they wouldn't have to get their hands dirty. But this time, I held on to one idea. If I survive this war, no one will ever silence me again. I didn't respond to the attacks. I became strategic. I started reading the contracts, talking to lawyers, building a network of allies inside the same world that once despised me, not to get revenge, but to protect myself. To prove that I'm not a victim. That I never was. And in the meantime, Gabriel watched me. And even though he didn't say it, he was beginning to admire me. Just when I thought I was learning how to move through this new chessboard, the quietest piece slid hard across the glass. The past, and not mine, Gabriel's. It all began with a box, an old wooden box. One of those that draws no attention but smells like time, like secrets, like something that should never be touched. I found it in his study, forgotten behind a curtain. It wasn't intentional. I was just looking for some documents he had asked me to review. "Don't open that box," he said firmly from the doorway. I turned around, surprised. Gabriel almost never raised his voice, but there he was, serious, tense, wounded. "Sorry, I didn't know it was private." He approached, took it with his hands, the same hands that still held strength despite his injury, and locked it away in a drawer. "We all carry something, Valeria. This is mine." That night I couldn't sleep, and days later, when I least expected it, I understood everything. Sandra, my stepmother, had started digging into his past. It wasn't a coincidence. Nothing ever was with her. She hired a private investigator, and what she found was dangerous ammunition, a silenced scandal. Years ago, Gabriel had been falsely accused of causing the ruin of a family business. The owner took his own life. The press was silenced thanks to lawyers, but the stain remained. He was young, naive. He made a financial move without knowing there was a family behind it, not just numbers. That mistake haunted him forever until the accident forced him to disappear from the spotlight. It wasn't the money. It was the guilt. And now Sandra wanted to use that to destroy him, to discredit his public image, to force him to cut all ties with our family and with me. When he told me, Gabriel lowered his gaze, not out of shame, but exhaustion. "If this comes to light, it won't just destroy me, Valeria. It'll drag you down too, your image, your future. Maybe you should leave before it's too late." But I wasn't that fragile girl from the beginning anymore. "You are not your past, Gabriel. You are the man who gave me a choice when no one else did." He looked up. He didn't say anything, but in his eyes I saw something new. Hope. For the first time, I felt I wasn't alone, and neither was he. That day, I didn't just decide to stay. I decided to fight. For him. For us. Because the past can haunt you, but it doesn't have to define you. Sometimes, when two broken people find each other, they can rebuild one another. The wedding wasn't a dream, nor a fairy tale, not even a happy moment. It was a calculated ceremony, choreographed, cold, like the marble of the rented church. There were no flowers for love, no sincere laughter, only formality cameras and looks disguised as respect, hiding knives. Sandra chose the dress, an elegant piece, but uncomfortable. I knew she hadn't chosen it to flatter me, but to remind me I didn't belong in that place. Still, I wore it with my head held high, as if it were armor. Gabriel arrived in his wheelchair, sober, impeccable. No one dared say anything, yet I felt it. Every whisper, every glance, the poor stepsister and the crippled millionaire. That's what we were to everyone, but not to each other. When he took my hand, I felt strength, presence, loyalty. His eyes didn't say, "I love you," but they did say, "I'm here. You're not alone." The priest spoke the words. "Do you, Valeria? Take Gabriel as your husband." "I do," I said, and I accepted everything. His past, his pain, his distance. "Do you, Gabriel, take Valeria as your wife?" "I do," he said. And in that moment, without knowing it, we sealed an alliance far bigger than a marriage of convenience. But as everyone clapped out of protocol, I saw Natalia's face, rigid, frozen, expressionless, and I knew with absolute certainty she wasn't done with me. After the ceremony, during the toast, Gabriel whispered something that froze my blood. "I checked the security footage. Natalia was at my house last week. She used a copy of Sandra's key to get in." "What was she looking for?" I asked. "The box. The same box with the documents about my past. The same secret that could destroy me. She found it, Valeria. It's no longer in my study. I've hidden it." And then I understood. Marriage wasn't the end of the drama. It was the beginning of a real war. Silence can hurt more than a scream. But scandal? Scandal is a weapon Natalia learned to use with surgical precision. She didn't attack all at once. She did it with class, with controlled cruelty. A week after the wedding, Gabriel and I attended a charity gala, one of those events where high society shows up to feel generous. The press was there. Cameras, speeches. Everything was plastic smiles and rehearsed applause, until she walked on stage. "Good evening. I wasn't on the programme, but there's something the public deserves to know." Gabriel squeezed my hand. "She dared," he murmured. And she did. Natalia faked a trembling voice like a cheap theatre actress as she recited her carefully crafted story. "My brother-in-law, the husband of my dear stepsister, was responsible for the downfall of a family business years ago. A tragedy that ended in suicide. They covered it up, and now they reward him with recognition, fortune, and love." Silence. No one breathed. Not even me. The cameras caught everything. Gabriel didn't stand up, didn't defend himself. He just lowered his gaze like he was reliving every second of that guilt. And that was what hurt most. Not what Natalia said, but how it made him feel. Weak. Again. "Let's go," I said, taking his arm. That night we lost contracts, clients, friends. Not because of the truth, but because the story was incomplete, because scandal sells. And when Natalia finished her speech disguised as a denouncement, she stepped off the stage with a triumphant smile. I just wanted to hug him, but Gabriel didn't let me. "I made a mistake. I should never have dragged you into this." I saw him break. For the first time since I met him, I saw a man defeated, and that lit something in me. "I won't let them destroy you for something you already paid for, with years of silence and pain. This doesn't end here, Gabriel. Not with you staying silent." And then, I made the decision that would change everything. I'll speak. For both of us. And this time, I won't stay silent. When a woman who's been silent too long starts to speak, the world shakes. It wasn't easy convincing Gabriel to let me do it. He had lived with guilt for so long, he could no longer tell the difference between punishment and justice. But I could, and I wasn't going to let Natalia bury him alive with half-truths. I decided to speak publicly, to face the same press that had just pointed their fingers at us, but this time not as the wife of a billionaire, but as Valeria, daughter of the man who sold his daughter for convenience, stepsister of the woman who destroys lives for fun. I arranged an exclusive live interview. The internet exploded with the announcement. They wanted scandal. They were going to get the truth. The journalist started gently, but I didn't. "My name is Valeria Diaz, and I want to tell the full story that Natalia left out." I told everything. The financial scheme Gabriel got dragged into when he was young, manipulated by older partners. How he was the only one who took the fall after the company collapsed. How he paid with silence. How he secretly helped the family of the businessman who had died. No one forced him. He did it out of humanity. But I didn't stop there. I spoke about my family. How my father forced me to marry Gabriel to save the reputation of his precious daughter Natalia, who didn't want to marry him. I said I accepted out of loyalty. And how, when Natalia changed her mind, she pointed at me and said I should disappear. The journalist was speechless, but the people weren't. Social media exploded. The narrative shifted. From the dark, mysterious billionaire to the man who carried guilt that wasn't his. From the opportunistic wife to the woman who was sold, yet defended the one who treated her with dignity. That night, Gabriel looked at me like he never had before. "Why did you do this?" he asked. "Because you saved me first. Now it's my turn." From that day, we were no longer two chess pieces moved by others. We were a team, a real couple. And Natalia began to lose power. Because when the truth is spoken with strength, not even names or money can stop it. After the interview, there was silence, but not the same kind. Not the kind that smells like fear or defeat. It was a dense silence, heavy with unspoken things. Gabriel looked at me differently. It was something between gratitude, guilt, and fear. Until one night, on the terrace of our home, the only place where the world didn't exist, he asked me to sit beside him, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "I want to tell you something I've never told anyone." I nodded. I didn't say a word, just listened to him take a deep breath. My accident wasn't just an accident. I stayed silent. I caused it. I felt a knot in my chest, not out of fear, but because of what that meant. It was a month after they accused me publicly. Friends abandoned me, I lost clients. And the worst part, my mother died believing I was guilty. One day I just got in the car and hit the gas. I knew there was a dangerous curve. He didn't cry, but I saw him fall apart. Not from the memory, but from having to say it out loud. I didn't want to die, I just wanted to disappear. "And that's what you did," I whispered. "Yes, but not how I thought. I survived, and I ended up like this." And then I understood. Living with the consequences was worse than dying. Until you came along. He turned to me. "You made me feel like I was still worth something. That I wasn't just a mistake in a wheelchair. That I could protect someone. That I could love, without having to apologize first." I had tears in my eyes. "You're not a mistake, Gabriel. You never were. But until you believe it yourself, you'll never forgive yourself." We hugged, long and tight. One of those hugs that shake everything you thought was broken forever. That night, we didn't sleep. We talked until dawn. About his mother, the curve of pain therapies, the fear of love. And for the first time, he allowed himself to be loved without fear. And I loved him without conditions. Gabriel's confession was a liberation, but the calm didn't last long, because Natalia, true to her style, doesn't disappear quietly. And yet, that's exactly what happened. One day, she simply vanished. She didn't answer calls, didn't reply to messages, didn't post anything on social media. Something unheard of for someone who lived to be seen. At first, we thought it was a strategy, that she was trying to make a dramatic return. But 48 hours passed, then 72, and still nothing, until Humberto, yes, the man who had manipulated us all, arrived desperate at our house. "Do you know anything about your sister?" My blood froze, because despite everything, Natalia was still family. A complex figure, but not a stranger. "Did you call the police?" "No, not yet. I don't want any unnecessary scandals. Typical Humberto. He cared more about his reputation than his daughter's whereabouts. But I was worried." Gabriel, seeing my face, grabbed his phone and dialed his contact in private security. "Activate your team. I want to know where Natalia is. Now." 2 days later, the first clue appeared. Her abandoned car at the entrance of an old estate on the outskirts of the city. The doors were locked, the keys inside, the phone on the seat, and no trace of her. The police finally intervened, but the media already knew. The headlines went viral. "Businessman's daughter disappears." After publicly accusing her brother-in-law, Gabriel was again the one blamed. Once again, the looks. Once again, the trial without evidence. And then something unexpected happened. An anonymous message came to my inbox. It only said, "You wanted me to disappear?" You succeeded. But don't think this ends here. The sender was erased minutes after sending it. Was it really her or someone playing with us? Gabriel was tense. Humberto was beside himself. And for the first time, I felt real fear. Because Natalia wasn't the type of person to hide without a plan. If she was missing, it was for something big. And if she came back, it wouldn't be peacefully. 4 days passed since Natalia's disappearance. And just when it seemed like the tension was starting to ease, an envelope with no return address arrived. It was delivered to Gabriel's office. The concierge found it on his desk, as if someone had left it there unseen. It was an old envelope sealed with the word Valeria, written by hand. I opened it. My fingers trembled, but my heart trembled more. It was a letter, and the handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Natalia. "Dear little sister, I never thought we would end up like this, you and I. If you're reading this, it's because I finally decided to disappear. Not out of cowardice, but because sometimes it's the only way to buy time. My father didn't tell you everything. Neither did Gabrielle, but I will." And she did. On 2 pages written by her own hand, Natalia explained that she had discovered the existence of a secret will. One in which her mother, before she died, had left Valeria as the sole heir. Not her, not Humberto. Me. But that document had been hidden by Humberto, fearing that a non-biological daughter would ruin everything. Natalia found it by accident a few months ago and kept it, not to hand it over but to use it. She wanted you to pay for always being perfect, the one who accepted everything, the one everyone protected, but in the end, you deserved it more than I did. So here it is, the letter and the document. Inside the same envelope, in a worn folder, was the original will. Signed, sealed, legal, Valeria Diaz, total heir, by the will of her real mother. The world stopped. Gabriel didn't say a word. Humberto, when we confronted him, broke down. He was going to lose everything if that came to light. So you preferred to sell me into a forced marriage. I preferred to save myself. Not just anyone would do that, Humberto. Not just anyone. It would take a coward. Gabriel looked at me. What are you going to do now? I took a deep breath. I had spent my entire life obeying, staying silent, giving in, but this time I would do what they never let me do. I would decide for myself. I received the inheritance legally, publicly, ironically thanks to Natalia. The press, the lawyers, the media, everyone had an opinion. But I didn't need opinions anymore, only facts. I went to see my father for the last time. I entered his office, the same one where he once looked at me coldly and said, "You're going to marry Gabriel. It's best for everyone." He lifted his gaze. He was older, or maybe just emptier. "Are you here to say you won?" "No, Humberto, I'm here to say I understood." He frowned. "I understood that you never wanted daughters, just extensions of yourself, that you sold my life as a favor when it was really a move to cover your mistakes, and still I survived. And now I forgive you, but not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let all this go." He didn't say anything. He just lowered his head, for the first time, without pride, without power. I left without looking back. With Gabriel, it was different. There were no more secrets, no more masks. We were two people who had been hurt by others, but had chosen not to hurt each other. One night on the balcony, where he had told me his truth, it was my turn to speak. "I didn't marry for love, Gabriel, but I stayed for you." He slowly approached with his chair, took my hand and whispered, "And now? What do you want to do?" What we never lived together, but free, by choice. We kissed, not as the protagonists of a story that ends, but as those who finally began their own.